Hey guys, tonight we're headed to a land of heat, dry, parched, lip-cracking heat. Imagine the kind of heat where your breath feels dusty, your sandals melt just a little, and every drop of water might as well be gold. You're walking through a burnt gold desert, the Persian plateau, where summer sun slices across the land like a blade. But here's the thing. In the middle of all this, someone figured out how to make ice. Real solid cold ice in the desert. And they didn't just store it, they engineered entire buildings to create it, hundreds of years before electricity was even a concept. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're listening from and what time it is. I love seeing our sleepy little global village light up. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge along a dust-beaten road in what is now modern-day Iran, although to you, this land feels timeless. Every step raises a little puff of pale yellow earth. The wind smells of salt and cracked stone. Out here, your thoughts slow down. And then you spot it, a walled village glowing under the afternoon haze, and beyond it, a mound rising oddly above the skyline, shaped like an upside-down beehive. It's not a hill. It's man-made. You're approaching a land once ruled by the Achaemenids. Think Cyrus the Great and Darius, those names that float around the edges of history textbooks. But those emperors aren't here. No, right now, you're walking into an everyday village where tradespeople and thinkers have been trying for centuries to solve one giant problem. How do you keep things cool when the sun tries to boil your soup before you even cook it? The land itself is dramatic. You've got mountain ranges like the Zagros hemming in vast arid valleys. The wind doesn't come often, but when it does, it carves through everything: rock, cloth, sometimes patience. The people, resilient, crafty, and just a bit sarcastic, especially when discussing the heat. If you survive this summer, an old man mutters to you at the well, you might just be worthy of a wife. You're not entirely sure he's joking. This place has seasons, but they're extreme. Summers are brutal. Winters, in contrast, bring bitter cold and the rare magic of snow on sand. And the people here, clever as they are, notice something. If winter gives you a little ice, you don't waste it. You find a way to keep it. Enter the beginnings of what will one day become the yakhchal. That's ice pit in Persian. Doesn't sound like much, but it's about to be the coolest thing, literally, you'll come across all night. You meet a group of men lugging baskets woven from reed, carrying chunks of something wrapped in straw and wrapped again in fabric. They let you peek inside. Ice. In the desert. In daylight. And no, it's not magic. It's centuries-old engineering, built on a deep understanding of materials, air, and patience. Here's where you start to realize, the Persian plateau isn't just surviving this climate, it's innovating with it. The village around you is built with the same material over and over, mud brick. But not just any mud. This mix includes ash, lime, sand, and even organic materials like goat hair or the occasional powdered egg shell. Because apparently goats and breakfast know no bounds here. Historians still argue whether these mixtures were fully understood as scientific compositions or just trial and error with helpful side effects. But the results? Strong, breathable, cool. As you pass shaded courtyards and domed rooftops, you begin to notice a theme: thermal logic. Thick walls don't just support structures, they buffer them against the sun. Floors are slightly lower than street level, keeping spaces naturally cooler. Roofs are curved, allowing hot air to rise and escape. And everywhere you look, little hints of moisture management, gutters, shallow channels, little pits that catch the dew. You hear a joke from a passerby. If the gods had known our summers, they'd have invented umbrellas before lightning. That's the mood here, grit wrapped in humor. And slowly, the pieces start connecting. Out on the edge of town, a group of children run around a massive dome made of earthen bricks. It looks abandoned, but it's not. A man waves you over and pushes aside a wooden hatch. A cool breath hits your face. Goosebumps. Real ones. You duck inside, into the semi-darkness of a yakhchal. It's silent except for the occasional drip of water. The air smells faintly sweet, almost like wet clay. You feel like you've walked into the hollowed-out ribcage of the earth, where the temperature dropped 20 degrees without anyone casting a spell. You sit on the stone edge and lean against the wall. Outside, the desert bakes. In here, your fingers tingle with cold. Not bad for a place built entirely without machines. The first Persians to build these structures understood two things deeply: airflow and insulation. And even though they didn't have thermometers or blueprint software, they knew their land. When the sun sets, temperatures drop rapidly, and certain shallow pools, called saruj ponds, can form thin ice overnight. Layer by layer, night after night, they'd harvest it. Then they'd store it in these domes, sealed with insulating materials and protected from wind, sunlight, and sometimes envious neighbors. And you'll meet those neighbors. But for now, you close your eyes, still cold from inside the dome, and imagine what kind of minds first thought, let's build a fridge out of mud, and let the desert cool it for us. You blink in the half-dark of the yakhchal, eyes adjusting slowly to the filtered light sneaking in through slits high in the dome. Your fingertips graze the walls, cool, rough, and bone-dry. This isn't just a lucky cave. This place was built on purpose, and every inch of it whispers design. You shuffle forward and find a spiral ramp that curves deeper, wrapping around a conical void at the center. The air grows colder with each step. It's the sort of chill that makes your ears feel oddly warm. Welcome to ancient Persian climate control, where physics met necessity and produced, well, ice vaults. These aren't just pits, they're storage systems rooted in geometry. The thick mud brick walls you brush against are sometimes over 2 meters wide at the base, designed to fight off desert heat the way a tortoise shell shrugs off sun. The dome shape isn't just pretty, it helps circulate air naturally and pushes warmer pockets upward and away from the ice. You hear a whisper from a guide leading a group of dusty travelers behind you. The thicker the base, the colder the soul. Poetic, maybe slightly creepy, but also weirdly accurate. Back above ground, the wind picks up, finally. It whistles past the low mud walls of the village and rustles the poplar trees that line an irrigation channel. A tall, cylindrical structure stands on the horizon like a lonely sentinel. You walk toward it, and there it is, your first windcatcher. They call it a badger. You can't help but smirk. Bad gear. It does look a bit like a square rocket chimney someone forgot to finish. But this humble tower? It's the ancestor of the modern air conditioner. Built with open slots facing different wind directions, the badger channels air downward into homes and storage spaces. And because hot air rises and cool air sinks, the entire system works without a single button or plug. Magic? Nope. Just gravity, pressure differentials, and some gutsy engineering. Here's where things get juicy. Some badgers were designed with internal cannets, underground water channels that cooled incoming air even more as it brushed over running water. So the wind wasn't just a breeze, it was a refrigerated whisper. You step into a modest house, ducking beneath a carved wooden doorway. Inside, the temperature drops. Not dramatically, but enough to notice. The badger connected to the roof is humming faintly, just air moving, no fan. Clay jugs line the walls. Some are beaded with condensation. Water that should be warm tastes like a mountain spring. All thanks to architecture rooted in wind. And here's your fringe tidbit of the evening. In some cases, ancient Persians built underground wind tunnels with copper plates inside to tune the airflow like an instrument. Sound and wind harmonizing? That's either a wild exaggeration or a fact too delightful to fact-check. Historians still argue whether this was purely functional or partly spiritual. Were they cooling their homes or also summoning the divine through a well-ventilated prayer? In the next alley over, you peek through a crack in a mud wall and spot a long, rectangular pond. It's not ornamental. At night, this shallow basin turns into an ice trap. You crouch near its edge and imagine the process. Cold desert air sinks into the pool, water freezes by dawn, and villagers cut and carry the thin sheets back to the yakhchal like chilled scrolls of treasure. They layer the ice with straw, ash, or sawdust. All organic. All insulating. It's a giant sandwich of survival. You lean against a crumbling wall and chuckle softly. Somewhere, an ancient Persian is shaking their head at modern folks who can't function when their AC breaks for 5 minutes. A boy passes by, leading a donkey with clay jugs strapped to either side. He pauses and offers you a drink. You thank him and take a sip. It's rose water. Cold. Fragrant. A bit surprising. The boy grins and says, "Good for the heart. Makes you sweat less." He trots off before you can ask if he's a time-traveling apothecary. As evening creeps in, the golden light turns everything honey-colored. Shadows stretch long and lazy across the village. You follow the scent of grilled meat and saffron down a narrow path, and find a small gathering where locals are breaking bread. Literally, the flatbread crackles as it's torn, steam curling from the middle. A woman in a loose cotton shawl beckons you over. "You came to see our freezer? she asks with a sly grin. You nod. It's not just the yakhchal, she says. It's the people. We make cold happen. The dome only helps. She offers you a bite of something wrapped in vine leaves, sweet, sticky, and unexpectedly tart. Try keeping that fresh without a dome, she winks. You sit and listen as they talk. The villagers discuss air like it's a living thing. How it behaves. How to trap it. How to trick it into doing your bidding. They argue gently over who made the first windcatcher. One elder insists it was Yazd. Another swears it was someone's great-great-uncle from Kashan. Someone else jokes that it was a woman too clever to keep baking in summer heat. So she built a tower and told no one. Historians still argue whether women were involved in the architectural design of these structures, or simply the users. Either way, it's clear who kept them running. Your eyelids grow heavy as the voices fade into a murmur. You lean back against the cool stone, the desert sky deepening into velvet above. And just before you drift into sleep, you wonder, not what you'd do without electricity, but what they would think if they saw you complaining about it. You stir to the soft sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, as if someone's walking barefoot across a stone floor. But it's not night anymore. The desert sun is just starting to rise, spilling golden light across the village rooftops and casting elongated shadows that stretch like sleepy cats. You rub your eyes, stretch your legs, and follow the footsteps, drawn toward the echo. You round a corner and see a man hunched over a pile of bricks, stacking them in neat curves. There's no mortar, just mud and straw slapped expertly between the bricks. He glances up at you, sweat beading along his forehead even in the early chill, and grins. Building another ice house, he says simply. We'll need it soon. You watch his hands move. There's a rhythm to it. Lay, press, twist. A kind of choreography passed down through centuries, because if anything in ancient Persia was built to last, it was a yakhchal. The design isn't random. The shape matters. The slope of the dome, the thickness at the base, the angle of the underground pit. Every detail works like part of an orchestra. And this dome he's building? It's not a perfect half-sphere. It tapers, narrowing toward the top like a dunce cap on purpose, because less surface area up there means less heat gets in. You walk closer and peek down into the empty pit below. It's deeper than you expected. The sides are lined with a mixture of sand, clay, and camel hair, called saruj, which hardens into something eerily close to concrete. Waterproof, heat-resistant, and practically impossible to break once cured. Here's a cool, literally mainstream fact. Some yakhchals kept ice frozen all the way through blazing summer months, even when external temperatures shot past 40 degrees Celsius. No electricity, no refrigerant gases, just cleverness, dirt, and patience. The man pauses and drinks from a small flask. He wipes his brow, then gestures to a small diagram sketched into the dirt nearby. Just lines and dots, but unmistakably a blueprint. My grandfather built his first one before he turned 12, he says. I built mine before I kissed a girl. You stifle a laugh, trying not to imagine a childhood love triangle involving ice domes. But there's something sweet about it. How this structure, this ancient desert refrigerator, is more than utility. It's a rite of passage, a family tradition, maybe even a form of love. Wandering away, you stumble onto a half-buried slab of stone. It's etched with symbols, wavy lines, circles, something that looks like a sun being swallowed by the earth. You tilt your head. Is it an old construction code? A religious symbol? Or just someone's doodle from 1,000 years ago? Historians still argue whether these markings were meant as ritual seals or blueprints, or both. In this part of the world, science and spirit often held hands. And speaking of spirit, you pass a small shrine tucked behind a yakhchal's shadow. Inside, there's an oil lamp and a figurine of a bull. You don't touch anything. You've seen enough movies to know better, but you do peer closer. A child's sandal rests next to the statue. Maybe an offering. Or maybe someone dropped it 800 years ago and never came back for it. The line between museum and real life blurs here. Your path curves again, this time following a series of sunken steps into what looks like an underground chamber. It's cooler here, and the walls are ribbed with ridges, air channels. They connect directly to the windcatcher you spotted earlier. But this space isn't for ice. It's for food. Shelves line the walls, carved right into the stone. Clay pots sealed with beeswax sit patiently in the shadows. You knock on one gently. The sound is solid, dense. A good sign. These weren't just freezers. They were pantries. Time capsules. You crack open a pot and catch the whiff of something sharp, earthy, and surprisingly fresh, pickled lemons. The room seems to whisper its own story: dried herbs, salted meat, pomegranate molasses, saffron rice. Whole winters passed because places like this existed. And somewhere above, the dome of the yakhchal hummed quietly under the wind's touch, doing its tireless job. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some villagers believed that sleeping inside the yakhchal for a night could reset the spirit. Like a cold reboot. Literally. Whether it was the chill or the quiet, or the dreamlike stillness. People claimed they woke with clearer minds and fewer regrets. Not exactly FDA-approved therapy, but hey, who needs a life coach when you've got frozen dirt walls? You climb back out, squinting against the now bright sun. The world looks different from the roof of the yakhchal. From up here, you can trace the invisible paths of air, how they slip over walls, tumble through towers, dive underground. It's like watching the desert breathe. And just as you think you've seen everything, you spot another dome in the distance. Smaller, rounder, not a yakhchal, but a sibling. You head toward it, curiosity tingling at your fingertips. A group of kids races past you, laughing, carrying chunks of ice wrapped in cloth. It's delivery day, apparently. The village rotates who gets to distribute the frozen blocks. It's like ancient DoorDash, but way cooler, literally and figuratively. You follow the giggles to a large communal house. Inside, families are preparing sherbet, flavored snow made from mountain ice and fruit syrup. Yes, even in the desert, children had dessert. One elder chuckles as he watches them. "We never needed a fridge," he says. "We had teamwork." He's not wrong. Yakhchals weren't solo acts. They were community projects, built with collective sweat and shared trust. Maintenance, harvesting, even guarding the entrance from nosy camels. It all required people working together. Not because of profit, because of survival. You take one last glance back at the towering dome, its shadow stretching across the sand like a finger pointing to the past. It isn't just architecture. It's proof that in the heart of the desert, long before Wi-Fi and thermostats, humans found a way to bend nature, gently, patiently, to their will. And as the kids offer you a bite of that icy sherbet, pomegranate, with a hint of rose, you take it gladly. Because really, who says history can't be delicious? Your lips are still tingling from that icy sherbet as you walk back toward the edge of the village. The taste of rose and pomegranate lingers, like a forgotten dream slowly melting on your tongue. The sun's higher now, painting everything in that honeycomb glow that only desert mornings seem to pull off. And yet, you're not sweating. Not much, anyway. Why? Because the air moves here, not like a random breeze, but something curated, almost choreographed. You lift your head and there it is again. The towering silhouette of a badger, a windcatcher, rising like a proud nose sniffing the sky. And tonight, we're going to crack that clever nose wide open. You get closer. This one's massive. Maybe 6 stories tall, with 4 open faces angled toward the cardinal directions. From the ground, you can see the inner veins, a cross-like structure that guides wind down into the building. You tilt your head, trying to imagine how air becomes cold. Let's break it down, sleepy explorer. The hot desert wind, which usually bakes you like a forgotten pizza, enters the tower's mouth. Once inside, it gets split by those inner veins and directed downward. And here's the real magic. As it drops, the air loses pressure, and like an eager tourist in a Persian bathhouse, it slows down, cools off, and picks up moisture. That's right. The tower isn't just catching wind. It's making it more bearable. Sometimes even cold. Now imagine this setup connected to an underground storage space, or better yet, a yakhchal. Wind in, heat out, ice preserved. Your brain doesn't need a PhD in thermodynamics to admire that. The mainstream historical fact? Windcatchers go back over 3,000 years in Iran. They weren't decorative flourishes. They were architectural life support. Entire homes, mosques, and storage buildings used them to stay cool in summers that could fry eggs on rooftops. And the fringe bit? Some say ancient builders used scented mud to line the inner channels, creating gentle floral aromas that cooled and perfumed the air. Think desert spa, but for free. Whether that's true or not, historians still argue whether those herbal linings had functional purpose or were just the ancient version of flexing. You climb the tower's narrow stairs, heart thumping. The walls close in around you, and it's oddly quiet. Then, about halfway up, you find something unexpected. A shallow basin. Just a wide ceramic bowl resting beneath an open shaft. Dusty, cracked, and half filled with old pebbles. You kneel. Why a bowl in the middle of a wind tunnel? Here's the kicker. It used to hold water. As wind came down, it passed over the surface of the water, enhancing evaporative cooling. Like how your sweat cools you down, only classier. Persian air conditioning wasn't just passive, it was strategic. Every little addition, water bowl, angle of vanes, insulation in the walls, worked together like members of a sleepy jazz band. By the time you reach the top, your scalp tingles. Not from fear, from breeze. A rush of air streams in from the northeast. It's clean, dry, whispering secrets from mountain passes far away. You close your eyes and lean into it, letting it ruffle your hair. For a moment, you forget that you're in a 2,000-year-old skyscraper made of mud. Then you open your eyes, and you see them. More towers. Dozens. Sprouting from rooftops across the village like elegant chimneys. Some square, others octagonal, a few even shaped like tulips. Each one customized for the wind patterns of that specific neighborhood. Because yes, ancient Persian architects were basically the OG data analysts. They didn't just build windcatchers, they tailored them. You descend slowly, your fingers grazing the walls. The texture changes every few steps. Some areas feel smoother, glazed with lime plaster, while others are rough, almost scaly. Maybe to disrupt airflow? Maybe just poor renovation work from the 1700s. We'll never know. That's half the fun. Back on the ground, you find yourself ushered into someone's home. No invitation necessary, it's just how these people are. The living room is cool, noticeably cooler than outside. There's no AC unit, no hum of electricity. Just the silent presence of that windcatcher above, doing its job like it has for centuries. A woman offers you a seat on a plush mat. You sink in gratefully. She hands you a small dish of yogurt mixed with mint. Cold, creamy, slightly sour. You raise an eyebrow and she chuckles. From the yakhchal, she says, like it's obvious. And it is, in a way. You're sitting inside a structure designed like a living lung. One that breathes air and filters it, cools it, and exhales it into your face. All made with local materials, zero fossil fuels, and an understanding of nature so profound. Modern architects are still scratching their heads trying to recreate it. A small boy runs in, shouting something about wind ghosts. You blink. The woman laughs. We say wind spirits live in the towers. Sometimes they whisper things. She taps her temple. Good ideas come when you sit under the tower long enough. Quirky, sure, but not entirely wrong. After all, this level of innovation had to come from somewhere. Maybe it was whispered on the breeze. You stand to leave, but before you go, she points to a niche in the wall, an old painting, faded almost to white. You lean closer. It shows a man building a tower. Next to him, a woman with a bowl of water. Above them, birds fly in tight spirals. There's no caption, just art. But the message is clear: cooperation. Balance. People and wind working together. As you step back out into the sunlight, the breeze catches your sleeve again. This time, it feels like a pat on the back. And for the first time, you realize something. All of this, ice domes, wind towers, underground tunnels, none of it was accidental. It was born from close attention, from love for the land and respect for its rules. They didn't fight the desert. They studied it. And in doing so, they tamed it. Kind of makes your window unit back home look a little insecure, doesn't it? Your sandals crunch softly against the clay-packed ground as you follow the curved alleyway past the windcatcher. A cat slinks past, its whiskers twitching at something invisible. Maybe a scent caught in the air, or maybe just ancient Persian ghost gossip. Because the air here really does talk. You round a bend and come face to face with what looks like a sand-colored dome rising gently out of the earth. It's not much taller than a house, but its surface gleams slightly, almost waxy in texture. The dome looks like it grew straight out of the desert, like a puffed-up mushroom taking a nap. But oh, this isn't some oversized igloo. You're looking at a yakhchal, literally an ice pit. Tonight, we're going in. Not gonna lie, you probably won't survive climbing inside a pitch-black ancient hole filled with blocks of ice. If you're claustrophobic, that is. But don't worry. I'll hold your hand. So what is this weird, lumpy dome? It's a marvel. A passive refrigerator. A freezer before electricity. A structure that kept icy, yes, actual frozen water, solid and usable in some of the hottest climates on Earth, even during blistering Iranian summers when donkeys sweat through their ears. That's a lie. Donkeys don't sweat through their ears. But the heat, that part's real. Now you step up to the small arched door. It's low, humbling on purpose, and thick, made of pressed mud brick and reinforced with palm wood. You duck inside and immediately, your skin notices the shift. It's cool. Still, a different world. You blink until your eyes adjust to the shadows. The space opens like a reverse volcano beneath you, tapering down into a deep underground chamber. If you dropped a coin, you'd hear it clink several seconds later. This is where the real storage happens. Mainstream historical fact incoming. These ice houses date back to at least 400 BCE, and they were found all across Greater Persia, from central Iran to parts of Afghanistan. Engineers used geometry, materials, and good old airflow to beat Mother Nature at her own sweaty game. Now let's nerd out a little. The dome itself is made of a special mixture called sarouj, a waterproof, insulating blend of sand, clay, egg whites, yes, egg whites, goat hair, and lime. Sounds like the weirdest omelet recipe ever, but it works. The mix hardens into something that resists heat, blocks sunlight, and shrugs off desert rain like it's too fancy to get wet. Beneath the dome is the pit, often over 6 meters deep. This is where ice was stored in massive blocks. Sometimes it was brought down from nearby mountains. But here's the plot twist. Often the ice was made right there. Yup. During cold desert nights in winter, shallow pools near the dome were filled with water. The dry air, clear skies, and open space let the heat escape rapidly. By morning, sheets of ice. Workers would break these and haul them into the pit. Layered with straw or sawdust, they could last until midsummer. Now for your quirky tidbit. Folklore says that one engineer tried to line the inner pit with date syrup, hoping to flavor the melting ice as it was retrieved. The result? A colony of ants the size of regrets. Big regrets. Let's just say it didn't catch on. As you move deeper inside, following a narrow spiral path carved along the dome's inner wall, you can feel the temperature drop with every step. It's quiet. Your footsteps echo faintly, and you can smell damp earth and the faint, mineral tang of old stone. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you realize this was once filled with treasure. Ice, cold food, medicine, delicate goods. This wasn't just about comfort, it was about survival. Babies got chilled water in summer. Nobles got chilled wine. Poor families stored yogurt and dried meat, knowing it wouldn't rot by noon. Historians still argue whether some yakhchals were also used to preserve the bodies of the recently deceased during long summers, when proper burial couldn't happen fast enough. Creepy? Maybe. Practical? Absolutely. You finally reach the bottom. It's quiet here, like time fell asleep. You reach out and touch the wall. Still cool. After all these centuries, the structure's doing its job. Look up now. From this angle, the dome curves like a sky turned upside down. And above, a small circular opening lets in just enough light to see. That's the escape hatch. Hot air rises and exits, creating a pressure difference that sucks in fresh, cool air from small vents near the base. It's like the whole building breathes. And all of it, without a single wire, coil, or coolant. Just science, geometry, and dirt. Kinda makes your modern fridge seem like a clunky intruder, doesn't it? You head back up, fingers brushing the curved walls. On the way, you spot a niche carved into the wall, no bigger than a bookshelf. It's empty now, but once it held jars. Glass or ceramic. Maybe rose water. Maybe pickled garlic. Maybe pomegranate syrup just waiting to be added to a chilled dessert. As you emerge blinking into the light, a breeze curls around your shoulders like a silk scarf. You breathe in deep. Somehow, even the outside world feels cooler now. A nearby elder waves you over. He's sharpening a tool, seated on a low stool beside a palm-woven basket. You ask if he remembers when they still used the yakhchal. He chuckles. I do. We kids used to sneak in during summer, sit at the base, and pretend we were snow kings. His eyes sparkle. One day, I found a jar of frozen mulberry juice. Best day of my life. You both sit quietly for a moment, the memory thick in the air. Then he leans over and whispers. Some say if you sleep inside a yakhchal, you dream of the future. You raise an eyebrow. He just smiles. And so you look at the dome one last time. This smooth, unassuming bump in the desert. A cold miracle. A clay promise against the rage of the sun. And your pillow tonight? Just maybe it feels a little cooler. The breeze still brushes your cheeks as you walk away from the domed yakhchal. Your skin tingling from the contrast of hot desert sun and that hidden pocket of cool. You glance back one more time at its sandy shell, quiet, unbothered, patient. Like it knows secrets about time and heat that you're only just beginning to guess. But we're not done. Not even close. Because storing ice was just half the job. The other half? Moving it, using it, keeping it from turning into useless puddles before anyone got their chilled melon slices or medicinal drinks. And for that, ancient Persia had another trick up its sleeve. Distribution networks that ran like silent arteries through cities and towns. You make your way toward the edge of the city. As you walk, the road slopes downward just a little. You're headed toward a khanat, an underground aqueduct system that not only carried water from distant mountain springs, but also helped transport ice and keep stored goods cool along the way. Sounds wild. It was. And it worked. Mainstream historical fact alert. The Persian khanat system is considered one of the oldest and most advanced water management systems in the world. Built as early as the first millennium BCE, these gently sloped tunnels funneled fresh water from mountain sources to the desert cities below, often across dozens of kilometers, all powered by gravity and hope. But here's the sneaky genius part. Many yakhchals were built close to the khanat shafts, so when the ice started melting, because let's face it, even the best dome has limits, the water was reabsorbed into the system and reused. No waste, just engineering finesse. Now, your sandals make a crisp echo as you step into one of the khanat access tunnels. It's narrow, a little damp, and about the size of a subway tunnel built by elves. The air smells metallic, like cold stone and old ideas. You duck through a carved arch where workers once hauled buckets and crates, filled with blocks of ice wrapped in straw mats, nestled into donkey carts or hand barrows. They moved quickly at dawn, before the sun turned everything into soup. Ice was delivered to homes, markets, temples, and baths. Yes, baths. And here's your quirky tidbit for the night. Some Persian nobles insisted on bathing in ice water, in summer, which sounds like either a refreshing dream or a punishment, depending on how much you hate cold showers. The rich could even afford to flavor their bathing water with saffron or rose oil. Makes your bubble bath seem kind of basic, doesn't it? But the rest of the population? Ice was precious, so they used it wisely. In hot months, ice was crushed and wrapped in palm leaves to make rudimentary air conditioners. Mothers cooled feverish children with slivers placed in cloth. Traders used it to prolong the shelf life of cheese, fish, even delicate herbs that would otherwise wilt like overcooked spinach by mid-morning. You climb back out of the tunnel now, blinking as the desert light hits you again. Ahead, the bazaar sprawls wide, canopies flapping, merchants shouting, donkeys braying with theatrical flair. And in the middle of it all, clay pots. Hundreds of them. They're stacked like puzzle pieces, each holding something precious. Some of those pots contain faluda, a sweet noodle-like frozen dessert made with rose water and thin vermicelli. Think of it as ancient Persian ice cream, the kind of thing that makes your brain shiver with joy. And yes, it was often served with crushed yakhchal ice and a generous dollop of lime syrup. You suddenly wish you had a spoon. Historians still argue whether ice distribution was strictly regulated by government officials or handled more loosely by guilds and families. Some records point to royal oversight, especially in cities like Yazd and Kerman, where ice was essential for both food storage and ritual use. Others suggest it was more grassroots, a community job passed down like bread recipes or good gossip. Either way, it worked. And not just in summer. You weave through the market, dodging a boy chasing a chicken, and pass a small shop where a woman ladles water into a row of clay goblets. Each one sits inside a shallow bowl of ice shavings. Refreshing, even if a little gritty. No filters back then, just cold and hope. You lean in and ask how long she's been selling like this. She shrugs, squinting against the sun. My grandmother taught me. Her grandmother taught her. You nod, smile, sip. It tastes like history with a hint of lime. Just then, a runner dashes by, shouting something about a wedding. You follow the trail of music and laughter down a side street and find a courtyard filled with women preparing a feast. There's rice, stew, trays of sweets. And in the center, a shallow brass bowl filled with crushed ice and rose petals. Guests take turns dipping cloths into the mixture, cooling their faces, wrists, and necks. You try it. It's divine. And then someone pulls out a surprise, frozen fruit. Apricots, dipped in syrup and chilled until their skins wrinkle like tiny raisins. Kids squeal with joy. A bride laughs. And you sit quietly in the corner, heart full, tongue tingling, thinking about how all of this, every frozen treat, every refreshing cloth, started with a dome, a tunnel, and the stubborn refusal to let heat win. That's what makes it beautiful. That, and the fact that none of this involved a single kilowatt of electricity. Your fingertips still feel cool from the rosewater ice bowl, but the day presses on, relentless. The Persian sun, as always, doesn't do breaks or half-efforts. It sears. And yet, somehow, everything around you hums with composure, like the city's figured out how to cheat the climate. As you wander deeper into the maze of narrow alleys, you come upon something peculiar. A tall, slender tower, rising like a finger from the earth. You squint. It's not a minaret, and it doesn't look like a guard post. In fact, it doesn't even have stairs. Just long, narrow slits and brick lattices. One of the locals notices you staring and offers a nod. "Windcatcher," he says. "Badger." Ah, now it clicks. This is the next piece of the cool puzzle. Because storing ice and distributing it was only part of the battle. The rest? Climate control. Indoor survival. Ancient Persians didn't just build fridges out of mud. They built air conditioning towers tall enough to tame the desert. Mainstream historical fact: badgers, or windcatchers, are traditional Persian architectural elements that function as passive cooling systems. Depending on design, they can draw cool air in, suck hot air out, or channel airflow over water to chill it further. No fans. No wires. Just geometry and pressure differentials. You enter a home, a large adobe courtyard house. The windcatcher rises above one corner like a quiet sentinel. Inside, it's serene. The air feels at least 10 degrees cooler than the street. You can breathe again. In the center of the house is a small pool, an abon bar or underground cistern, shaded and sunk below floor level. The windcatcher channels airflow down into this pool, skimming across the water, picking up coolness like a whispered secret, then flowing gently into the rooms beyond. And the walls? Almost a meter thick, made of mud brick and lime plaster. Heat doesn't stand a chance. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some regions, people suspended clay jars of milk or wine directly in the path of the wind tower's breeze. That's right. Persian air conditioning doubled as a mini fridge. Chill your house and your beverage at the same time? Efficiency goals met. You recline against one of the cushions in the sitting room, imagining the architects of the day. No computer modeling. No climate charts. Just raw experience and centuries of experimentation. And maybe some really sweaty test runs. Some historians still argue whether windcatchers were Persian inventions, or if they originated earlier in Egypt or Mesopotamia. The design appears in several ancient regions, but Persia arguably perfected them, turning a basic concept into a refined system of urban comfort. And considering they're still used in some desert cities today, you'd have to say they nailed it. The wind shifts slightly, and the scent of jasmine and baked bread wafts through. You follow it to the kitchen, where a woman fans an open hearth with one hand and sips iced pomegranate juice with the other. You raise an eyebrow. She grins. "From the cellar," she says, pointing downward. You hadn't noticed the trapdoor. Below the house is a subterranean pantry, built low to escape the day's heat, lined with smooth stones and cold bricks. Jars of pickled vegetables, dates, milk, and ice-cold jugs of water line the walls. The floor is damp cool. You inhale deeply and feel the chill snake through your lungs. This, you realize, is a whole system. An ancient synchronized dance of architecture and climate, where wind towers, shaded courtyards, thick walls, yakhchals, and kannets all work together. Not just to survive the heat, but to live well within it. And the ingenuity wasn't confined to palaces or temples. Even humble village homes had miniature versions. Tiny wind slits above windows, water jars placed in the crossbreeze, rooftops shaded with grapevines or lattice screens. Everyone played their part in outsmarting the sun. You climb to the rooftop now, where laundry flaps and pigeons peck between clay tiles. From here, the city stretches out like a terracotta quilt, interrupted by the occasional dome, tower, or splash of green. You spot another windcatcher 2 streets over. Then another. Then 10 more. They pepper the skyline like sentinels of air, each one quietly redirecting wind, sculpting comfort. And yet, with all this precision, all this cleverness, ancient Persians weren't rigid. Designs varied wildly by region, by social class, even by the temperament of the local wind. In coastal towns where humidity was the enemy, badgers were built differently, sometimes using vertical shafts with evaporative cooling pools at the base. Inland, with drier air, the emphasis shifted to insulation and ventilation flow. The result? A patchwork of cool oases, tailored for different microclimates. You chuckle softly, realizing they were basically desert DJs, remixing airflow for maximum chill. As dusk settles, you walk the lanes again. The sun dips low, casting long shadows. Lights flicker behind lattice windows. A boy races by with an armful of damp laundry, freshly chilled by windcatcher breeze. Somewhere, a grandmother hums over a bowl of saffron rice, cooled with a stone pulled from her cellar. And as you sit on a doorstep, feeling the wind on your skin and the mud brick wall at your back, it dawns on you. This isn't survival. This is elegance. This is style. This is civilization that figured out how to look the sun in the eye, nod politely, and then build a secret escape just beneath its nose. The next morning, before the sun has fully rubbed the sleep from its eyes, you find yourself drawn outward again. You're not sure what you're looking for now. Maybe a missing piece, maybe just one more example of the desert's quiet genius. What you don't expect is the sound. It's faint at first, a dull murmur beneath the earth. Not wind, not footsteps. Water. You follow it. The alley twists, the scent of wet stone and tamarind filling the air. Finally, tucked behind a narrow archway and a wall of flowering bougainvillea, you find a stairwell. It dives deep underground, disappearing into shadow. Carved above the entrance is a simple inscription in Persian calligraphy. Water is life. You descend, step by step, the air growing cooler and damper with each breath. The tunnel opens into a long corridor lit by slatted shafts of daylight. The floor is slick. And there, in the center groove of the stone walkway, a stream flows. A canet. This is it. The lifeline. The ancient secret no one talks about enough. Canets, underground aqueducts, are one of the most audacious hydrological feats ever pulled off by human hands. Originating in ancient Persia over 2,500 years ago, these sloping tunnels channeled water from mountain aquifers across miles of desert to irrigate farms, feed fountains, and fill city reservoirs. And they did it without pumps, electricity, or pressurized pipes. Just gravity. Just patience. Just audacity. You walk along the corridor, your fingers skimming the damp stone wall. Every 20 or 30 meters, you pass a vertical shaft, open to the sky above. These were the construction access points. Workers would dig from the surface down, then sideways, connecting the shafts with gently sloping tunnels. Some canets stretched for 30 miles or more, perfectly angled to keep water flowing across the desert like a secret whisper. You stop to watch the stream for a moment. Clear, cold, timeless. Fun fact. In some ancient cities, families paid for rights to draw a certain number of water minutes from the canet. Time, not volume, was the currency of hydration. You want a full bath? That's 5 minutes. Cooking? 2 minutes. Rice farming? Better be good friends with the water master. But it wasn't just engineering. It was ethics. There were strict rules. Don't pollute the canet. Don't divert someone else's flow. Don't waste. Water was life, and life required respect. Back above ground, you notice a small public fountain built into a wall, shaded by a tree. A ceramic jug rests nearby, inviting anyone to drink. There's no lock, no guard, just quiet trust in the decency of strangers. This wasn't just infrastructure. It was a whole worldview. By noon, you're in the outskirts of the city, where gardens bloom improbably in the dust. The fields are green, orderly, and symmetrical, intersected by tiny canals that glimmer in the sunlight. Children splash barefoot in a channel, shrieking and laughing. A man leans on his shovel and waves to you, the blade wet with life. This is the endpoint of the canet, the final act. Water, summoned from the deep, delivered across miles of nothingness, blooming here into everything. And it wasn't done by accident. It was designed, calculated, passed down. Canet digging was a sacred profession in Persia, practiced by families who specialized in reading soil, measuring slope by instinct, and carving inch by inch through stone and sand. It could take years to finish a single canet. Some workers died underground. Some never saw the finished stream. But their legacy flowed on, quite literally. You sit on a low stone wall, legs dangling over the canal. A farmer offers you a pomegranate, cracked open like a jeweled secret. You bite into it, juice trickling down your chin, and watch the water drift past. There's no roar, no drama, just a steady, endless gift. And you realize something simple, something beautiful. The genius of ancient Persia wasn't about fighting the desert. It was about listening to it, understanding that survival wasn't in opposition, but in collaboration, where wind became balm, ice became luxury, and water became an invisible thread, tying everything, everyone together. You stand now, brushing dust from your hands, heart heavy in the best way. Because the secrets of survival here weren't really secrets at all. They were signs of a civilization that saw heat not as punishment, but as a teacher, and learned with time and mud and wind and stone how to build an oasis not around the fire, but within it. You rise from the stone wall, the taste of pomegranate lingering on your tongue, and start walking toward the city's quieter quarters. Here, the hustle has faded into a gentle murmur. Kids chasing pigeons, merchants sweeping their doorsteps, the occasional clink of ceramic cups. It's the kind of place where you can almost hear the past breathing. And that past is eager to share more secrets. As you stroll, your gaze falls on a peculiar building, a large, sun-dried mud brick structure crowned by a tall, narrow tower. It looks like a relic, almost out of place, except it's been here for centuries. This is a badger, or windcatcher, a Persian invention that turns the desert wind into a cool, refreshing breeze for the interiors below. You pause and let your fingers trail along the warm mud walls, feeling the texture, rough, sun-baked ancient. Windcatchers are fascinating because they don't just passively wait for the wind. They actively command it. The architecture funnels hot desert air up and out, while cooler air circulates in. Some badgers have multiple openings, like delicate stone fingers reaching for every possible breeze. Others are even more elaborate, designed with channels inside that trap moisture or push air over underground water pools, like a primitive air conditioner. Historians still argue whether these structures originated in Persia or were inspired by earlier Mesopotamian designs. Either way, by the first millennium BCE, badgers had become a common feature across Persian cities, a testament to how seriously they took the desert heat. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. In some villages, the height and complexity of your badger was a subtle status symbol. The taller, the more prosperous your family. Imagine a little friendly neighborhood competition. Oh, your windcatcher only has 2 shafts? Mine's got 4, plus a built-in birdhouse. It's like the ancient version of my air conditioner is bigger than yours. As you slip inside, the temperature immediately drops. The walls seem to breathe with coolness, shadows stretching like lazy cats across the floor. The air tastes faintly of earth and aged stone. You lean against a column and close your eyes for a moment. There's a rhythm here, a slow dance between wind and structure, sun and shadow. The badger doesn't just cool the house. It whispers the story of a culture deeply in tune with its environment. Instead of fighting nature, Persians worked with it, crafting buildings that were as much alive as the people inside them. You can almost hear the centuries-old conversations. Let's build the wind a little home here. Make it twist and turn, so it cools the oven but never the guests. And don't forget the scent of jasmine outside the window. As you step back outside, the sun seems a little less harsh. The wind feels like an old friend, cool and teasing. It's easy to forget in our modern world of buzzing AC units and endless electricity that humans once engineered comfort through patience, observation, and a whole lot of trial and error. And now, when you close your eyes tonight, you might just imagine that gentle breeze slipping through your own windows, carrying with it the wisdom of those ancient windcatchers, patiently cooling the day's heat, one quiet gust at a time. You follow the faint sound of laughter and chatter toward the heart of the city's marketplace, where vibrant colors and scents mingle in the air. Here, amid the jostling crowds and the calls of merchants, the ingenuity of ancient Persian refrigeration reveals another clever layer. Not all cooling came from wind and mud alone. Persians had a knack for combining natural elements with architectural tricks to keep their food fresh and their drinks cold. One of their prized innovations was the yakhchal, literally meaning ice pit. Picture a massive, cone-shaped mud brick structure, its thick walls radiating an almost magical chill even under the blazing sun. Inside, they stored ice harvested from nearby mountains during winter, preserving it for months to come. This was no mere hole in the ground. The yakhchal's design was a feat of engineering. Its thick, insulating walls made from a special mortar called saruj, a blend of sand, clay, egg whites, lime, goat hair, and ash, kept the interior cold and dry. But how did the ice survive the summer's heat? It turns out, the yakhchal's clever design used both insulation and airflow. Windcatchers directed cool air downward into the storage chamber, while the thick walls prevented heat from seeping in. Moisture inside evaporated slowly, minimizing melting. Historians still argue whether the ice was transported daily or stored long-term. But either way, this invention was a game changer. Imagine being able to enjoy chilled sherbet or preserve delicate fruits in a desert climate centuries before refrigeration was invented in the modern era. A quirky note: some yakhchals doubled as community coolers, where people would store perishables and even wine for special occasions. These were the ancient Persian equivalents of neighborhood iceboxes, except on a monumental scale. Talk about communal chill vibes. Walking around the base of the towering yakhchal, you can almost hear the echoes of families gathering there on hot days, reaching into the cool depths to fetch sweet treats or preserved delicacies. This wasn't just a structure. It was a center of daily life, a testament to how deeply the Persians understood their environment. And when you think about it, modern refrigeration with its humming compressors and blinking displays might seem impressive. But it's really just the latest chapter in a long story of human creativity in cooling. You smile, imagining yourself standing here in the dry heat, feeling a sudden rush of cool air swirling down from above, a breeze carrying ancient secrets wrapped in mud brick walls. The sun is beginning to dip lower now, casting long shadows over the city's stone-paved streets as you wander toward a quieter, less traveled part of town. Here, the rhythm of life slows, and you catch glimpses of daily rituals intimately tied to these ingenious cooling methods. You find yourself at a humble courtyard where a family is preparing their evening meal. Nearby, a shallow basin filled with water reflects the soft pink sky. This simple scene introduces you to another fascinating Persian cooling tradition: the evaporative cooling method, which relies on the magic of water and air. You dip your fingers into the cool water, feeling the slight chill caused by evaporation. The same process that makes you feel refreshed on a hot day when a breeze dries your skin. Persian homes often incorporated water features, small pools, fountains, and wet clay pots, to boost this natural cooling effect. These wet clay pots, called mash, are porous vessels filled with water, positioned strategically around the home or garden. As the water seeps through the pot's walls and evaporates, it draws heat away from the surrounding air, lowering the temperature ever so gently. Historians still debate whether this technique was inspired by observations of nature or trial and error. Either way, it's a simple yet elegant solution to beating the desert heat without a single spark of electricity. Here's a quirky tidbit. In some regions, people would cover these water pots with a cloth or straw to protect the water from dust and insects, making the setup look like a tiny, ancient spa for your fruits and vegetables. It's like the Persian version of a cooling mist machine, but all natural and way more rustic. As evening falls, the courtyard becomes a sanctuary of coolness. The air hums softly with the sound of trickling water, and the breeze carries the subtle scent of wet earth and herbs. You imagine yourself sitting here, sipping a lightly chilled drink from the yakhchal earlier, while the mash pots continue their quiet work, turning the heat into gentle relief. It's a rhythm of life that's both practical and poetic, one where architecture, nature, and daily habits intertwine in a dance to keep people comfortable through long, dry days. And as the stars begin to peek out overhead, you realize that these cooling traditions weren't just inventions. They were a way of life, shaped by a deep respect for the environment and a patient understanding of its rhythms. You pause, listening to the soft splash of water, and feel yourself slipping a little closer to the calm, slow heartbeat of ancient Persia. The city's lights twinkle faintly behind you now as you drift toward the outskirts, where the desert stretches wide and silent beneath a star-speckled sky. Here, the ancient Persians found even more subtle ways to harness the natural world's power to keep cool. You come upon a curious sight: a shallow, sunken garden bordered by low mud walls, with narrow channels of water weaving between fragrant plants. This, you learn, is a Kanat garden, a living example of how irrigation and cooling were intertwined in Persian life. Kanats were underground water tunnels that carried fresh mountain water deep into arid regions, feeding fields, orchards, and towns. The garden you're admiring relies on the Kanat's steady flow, with water bubbling quietly through the channels, cooling the air and nurturing lush vegetation. Historians still argue whether the Kanat's primary purpose was irrigation or climate control, but it's clear that these tunnels created microclimates, cool, moist pockets amid the harsh desert heat. You kneel beside a bed of mint and rose bushes, inhaling their soothing scent carried on the cool air. The combination of water, plants, and shade creates a natural refrigerator of sorts, perfect for preserving herbs, fruits, and even medicines. The Kanat system's subtle whisper of running water works much like the modern humidifier, easing dryness and heat in the surrounding air. Imagine, then, how vital this was not only for comfort, but also for health in a climate that could otherwise sap your strength. And here's a little-known twist. Some cannets were engineered with deep, wide chambers that acted as natural cellars, storing food and ice. Their underground position kept temperatures surprisingly low, much like the famous yakhchals, but on a more decentralized scale. As you stroll along the water's edge, you can almost hear the soft footsteps of gardeners tending their crops, humming folk songs passed down through generations. It's a living tradition, a fusion of water, earth, and air that embodies the Persian genius for cooling without modern technology. The gentle burble of the cannet water mingles with the night's calm, carrying you deeper into a sense of peace and wonder. The desert's heat feels far away here, replaced by the quiet confidence of ancient ingenuity flowing beneath your feet. You sit back on the cool earth, watching the stars blink lazily above, and realize that this blend of science, art, and nature was the heart of Persian refrigeration. As dawn edges the sky with pale light, you find yourself walking through a bustling marketplace, vibrant with the quiet hum of early shoppers and merchants arranging their goods. The scent of fresh dates, spices, and crisp bread fills the air, but your attention is drawn to a particular stall where the vendor proudly displays what looks like ancient cooling technology in miniature. These are ceramic ice pots, or sarab, crafted with delicate holes and glazed interiors. You learn these pots were a clever offshoot of the yakhchal concept, designed to chill water and even keep small quantities of perishable food cool. Portable refrigeration in a time before iceboxes. The vendor explains how these pots were filled with water and left overnight in open courtyards, where the combination of wind and evaporative cooling would lower the water's temperature by several degrees, enough to soothe thirst on a scorching day. Here's a curious note. In some areas, people would add salt or certain herbs to the water to enhance cooling or preserve it longer. A primitive but effective form of refrigeration chemistry. You chuckle to yourself, thinking how these ancient folks were probably the first to invent flavored ice, without even knowing it. Historians still argue whether these ceramic pots were mainly for the elite or if common folk also used them regularly. But it's clear they became a beloved household item across Persian society. Nearby, a gentle breeze carries the soft clinking of pottery and the murmur of morning greetings. You imagine sitting beside this stall, holding a chilled cup of mint-infused water, feeling the coolness seep into your skin, a welcome reprieve from the heat. And speaking of heat, you recall the old story about ice being transported from mountain peaks down to the cities, packed with straw to keep it from melting. An early example of a cold chain that would impress even today's logistics experts. This ancient dance between wind, water, and mud continues to impress you, not only for its ingenuity but also for its quiet, patient elegance. It's the kind of knowledge you almost forget is genius because it's so seamlessly woven into daily life. As the sun rises higher, you sip your now lukewarm water and smile, grateful for these centuries-old tricks that remind you how human creativity always finds a way to bring comfort, no matter the climate. The day drifts on, and you wander further into a quiet corner of the city where ancient workshops once thrived. Here, artisans shaped mud bricks, mixing earth, straw, and water with a practiced rhythm that seems almost meditative. You learn this mud wasn't just for building walls. It was a key player in the Persian refrigeration story. These workshops produced the famous yakhchal bricks, specially crafted with a high salt content that made them more resistant to heat and moisture. The brick's porous structure allowed for a slow, controlled evaporation of water, a crucial factor in keeping the ice storage chambers cool. As you touch one of these bricks, it feels surprisingly light and rough. You imagine the ancient craftsmen, perhaps humming quietly as they shaped these essential pieces. Unsung heroes of the cooling revolution. The humble mud brick, after all, was the backbone of a technology that changed how people stored food and survived heat. Historians still argue whether this particular mix of mud and salt was discovered through trial and error or by some inspired experiment, but the result was undeniably effective. These bricks formed the walls of yakhchals that could keep ice frozen all summer long, even under the blistering sun. Nearby, a small puddle glistens on the workshop floor. You step carefully around it, recalling the principle of evaporative cooling. The same one that cools your sweat on a hot day, magnified by these clever materials and architectural designs. You can almost hear the gentle rush of wind through the windcatchers above, pushing cooler air down into the chambers, making the bricks sweat just enough to chill the interior. It's like nature's own air conditioner, built from the earth itself. And in this dusty workshop, surrounded by the smell of wet mud and straw, you feel a calm admiration for the patient experimentation that ancient Persians invested into this craft. Their quiet perseverance shaped a legacy that still humbles engineers and architects today. You breathe in deeply, savoring the mix of history and earth, and realize that sometimes the coolest ideas come from the simplest materials, shaped by hands who understood their environment deeply and gently. The sun dips low, casting long shadows over the city's ancient skyline, and you find yourself standing once again before a yakhchal, its massive dome glowing softly in the fading light. It's a quiet moment, the kind that invites reflection on the ingenuity you've witnessed. How the Persians turned wind, mud, and a little water into a marvel of refrigeration. You think about the community effort required to build and maintain these structures. Farmers hauling ice from mountains, artisans crafting special bricks, engineers designing wind towers, and families gathering in cool courtyards. It was a living system, a delicate balance between human skill and nature's rhythms. Historians still argue whether these refrigeration techniques were widely accessible or reserved for wealthy elites. But what's clear is that their influence spread far beyond Persia, inspiring cooling methods throughout the ancient world and even echoing into modern times. You imagine how, during those long summer nights, families might have sat around these cool spaces, sharing stories, drinking chilled sherbets, or simply enjoying a break from the desert's relentless heat. This isn't just technology. It's a gentle pause, a shared breath of relief in a challenging environment. And here's a fun thought. Despite all the sophistication, the basic principles behind Persian refrigeration are still the same as the way you might cool your skin with a damp cloth or feel a breeze on a hot day. Sometimes, the oldest solutions remain the most elegant. As twilight deepens, you settle into the quiet rhythm of the city, the soft hum of wind through the yakhchal's vents lulling you toward rest. The desert night wraps around you like a cool blanket, reminding you that even in the harshest places, human creativity finds a way to bring comfort. You close your eyes, carrying the memory of this ancient coolness into your dreams, a whisper of mud, wind, and water that transcends time. Word count: 1098. Slowly now, the pace softens further. Imagine the gentle desert breeze fading to a hush, the heat dissolving into a calm, velvety night. Let your breath lengthen and deepen as you drift alongside the cooling waters and whispering mud walls. Feel the cool air cradle you softly, as if the yakhchal's very breath is a lullaby, soothing away the day's warmth and worries. In this quiet, you are safe, held by the wisdom of those who first tamed the desert's heat with patient care and cleverness. Let their legacy be a quiet comfort as your thoughts grow softer, more distant, like the stars dimming into dawn. Now, with the final echoes of ancient Persia's coolness settling around you, let yourself slip gently into sleep. Sweet dreams.